يا راغبا في كل علم نافع.
ينمو العلم ويتقدم بتقنياته ومجالاته، ومعه نطور أدواتنا في تقديم العلم الشرعي. أكاديمية
زاد أكاديمية ينبوعها صاف ليروي غلة الظمآن. وتعلم الفقه الميسر عاملا بالشرع دون تعصب لفلان. بشرى لنا زاد أكاديمية للعلم كالأزهار في البستان.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه. Postnatal bleeding, known as nifas. Nifas or lakia is the bleeding that comes from a woman's uterus due to giving birth. And this bleeding comes after natural birth, or sometimes even after cesarean surgery. When it comes, it has a maximum, but it does not have a minimum. So, what's the maximum time a woman can bleed after giving birth? The answer is 40 days. And whatever exceeds, would be considered to be istihada. And the rulings of a woman and her postnatal bleeding, or nifas, the rulings are exactly the same as the rulings of a woman on her menses, where she cannot touch the Quran, she cannot perform tawaf, she cannot pray, she cannot fast, she cannot have intercourse, but her spouse can enjoy anything else other than the intercourse. She cannot enter the masjid or stay in it, etc. Once the bleeding stops, she must perform ghusl so that she would become pure again and she can resume her life normally, exactly like a woman on her menses. And of course, she has to make up for the fasting, not the prayers. And it is also worth pointing out that some women, after maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks of their giving birth, the bleeding stops. What should she do? Well, the most authentic opinion, if the bleeding stops after, let's say, 20 days, and she sees her purity. You remember there are 2 signs of purity. She sees one of them. In this case, she should have ghusl, pray, fast, and be intimate with her husband. But if the bleeding resumes after a week, so now the total is now 27 days from her giving birth. In this case, this bleeding is considered to be part of her nifas. She should stop again until the 40 days are concluded. So even if she gets periods of purity and she sees the sign of purity and she performs ghusl, once the bleeding starts within the 40 days, that would be considered to be part of her postnatal bleeding. Now, what if a woman miscarriages and she bleeds afterwards? Is this considered to be postnatal bleeding? There are cases. Case number 1. From day 1 of pregnancy till day 80 of being pregnant, in these 80 days, if she miscarriages, the bleeding is not postnatal bleeding. Why? Because the human structure is not formed, and the fetus would only be chunks of meat without any form. Scenario number 2, if the pregnancy is 120 days or more. We know that the soul is breathed in the fetus when it is 120 days old. So definitely this is a human being. And if she miscarriages from 120 days onwards, this is considered to be nifas. The gray area is between 81 and 120 days. In this period, the fetus has no soul. It's not a human being yet. But if what comes out of the woman when miscarried is or has the form of a human being, a head, arms, and legs, then this is considered to be her postnatal bleeding. We consider her to be in the state of nifas. If it's only chunks of meat, no form, then she disregards this as an istihada and she moves on. What is the difference? The difference is that whether she prays or not. So it is crucially important to decide and know. What is the difference between the irregular blood and the blood of menses and other types? Women, they say, are divided into 4 types when it comes to bleeding. And these 4 types can be summarized as, number 1, woman who is pure. She has no monthly period, no postnatal bleeding, no colored discharge. So she has nothing to worry about. The second type is the woman on her monthly cycle or menses. And this is the one that sees her menses at its time with its conditions. The third woman is the woman with istihada, and this refers to the one who sees blood flowing or seeing the blood following her menses that is different in nature to her monthly cycle. And the fourth one is the one with the irregular bleeding, and this refers to the one who sees blood that is not connected to her menses, as in the case, for example, of a woman who has miscarriage and the likes. So anytime a woman sees blood that is not connected to her monthly cycle, this would become irregular bleeding, and she would continue to do everything a pure woman does, with the exception of that she has to wash herself, perform wudu when the time of the prayer begins. Only when the time of the prayer begins and resumes her normal life. Now, finally, we have to indicate that nifas has the same rulings of al-hayd, generally speaking, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد.
يا راغبا في كل علم نافع
ينمو العلم ويتقدم بتقنياته ومجالاته، ومعه نطور أدواتنا في تقديم العلم الشرعي. أكاديمية
زاد أكاديمية ينبوعها صاف ليروي غلة الظمآن، وتعلم الفقه الميسر عاملا بالشرع دون تعصب لفلان. بشرى لنا زاد أكاديمية للعلم كالأزهار في البستان.